Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. So, Mark Carney has officially been sworn in as Prime Minister of Canada. He is the 24th Prime Minister of Canada. I think a lot of Americans would be shocked by that. I know we've only been around since 1867, but we've still only had 24 Prime Ministers because while some people only have a few months in office, like Kim Campbell, you have people like William Lyon Mackenzie King that are around for like 25 years. But anyways, with Mark Carney being sworn in, this is going to rip up the turf that is Canadian politics over the next few months. I don't think the Liberals even know what's really going to shake out in the near future. That's why, after Carney was sworn in his first press conference, he doesn't sound too confident about going into an election right away. And it seems like the Liberal team wants to wait and see, and the Conservative team also wants to wait and see what his appeal is in the polling as time goes on. I think right now we are in another period of response bias for Liberals. First, it was when Justin Trudeau resigned and the Liberal leadership race kicked off. And then we have it again with Mark Carney becoming the Liberal leader. A bunch of Liberals are going to be super excited. So, no doubt you are going to see a big pop for the Liberals, and then it's going to decline. If the Liberals thought this was a solid, real gain of support, they'd be calling an election ASAP. If they're 5 ahead of the Conservatives, they'd go for it, like some of these polls are supposedly showing. I don't think they actually believe that, and their internal polling probably doesn't show it. But I first want to start with Mark Carney being sworn in. Then I want to jump to his press conference where he took some questions about Brookfield as well as the timing of the next election and sort of analyze what this probably all means going forward. Anyways, before I get into it though, guys, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, as well as leave a comment on anything you find interesting. I always try and scroll through, once, twice, 3 times on the comments of each video to see what people were thinking. But here is Mark Carney being sworn in, and it's kind of awkward. Like, you think he would have been a little more rehearsed for something he knew was coming, but he's just kind of stiff. And I think this is going to be a general abstract problem going for him in the future.
Execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Prime Minister.
He's really not beating the allegations that he's like Mr. Burns in real life. He's just kind of awkward, cartoony, stiff, has an entire background where you could say that he's an extremely greedy man. But yeah. Honestly, the one asset he has is maybe by being this bumbling a little bit, he has that kind of awkward charm with certain people. But now let's jump ahead to him talking about the timing of the next election. The fact that he answers it this way makes me feel like the Liberals aren't actually that confident that they're going to be able to win, despite the polls supposedly showing, like, if you aggregate them all together, the Liberals are winning. I still trust Abacus data and innovative research the most. Abacus did show a poll where the Liberals were only down 4 points on the Conservatives, which is a very scary place to be as the Conservatives. I do think it's just because of a leadership bump that will trail off by a few points over the next few days. But the one thing the Conservatives have to do is stop playing it safe. Sometimes parties, when they're ahead and stuff starts happening, what they do is they become risk managers. All they do is tell everyone to shut up, don't do anything, and we're trying to maintain our lead, so just say nothing. It's like, well, you got in the lead by saying stuff. So doing nothing is just going to guarantee your lead keeps going down. But here's Mr. Mark Carney talking about the timing of the next election.
Can I ask you what your plans are for the next few weeks? Are you going to be bringing back the House? Are you going to be calling an early election? And if so, when should Canadians expect to go to the polls?
Well, they certainly should expect to go to the polls before November.
Before November also means the maximum length of time that he could be in office, because he must call it sometime in mid-October, which would mean, based on the shortest election period that you could call, 27 days, that it would be sometime in November. So that's kind of a joke in regards to.
The news today is behind me. An exceptional group of individuals who are serving Canada, united, focused cabinet, focused on action, focused on the issues for Canadians. We are, as I said a moment ago, we will be going to take some decisions which directly meet some of the objectives I set out in my remarks and we've been discussing. That's the news for today. There will be other news in the coming days with respect to ensuring that we have as strong a mandate that is needed for the.
And what were his remarks at his swearing in? I can tell you it's all just pretty generic. You know, Canada needs to be put on a new path. We need to, you know, innovate more. We need to kind of throw out what's old and bring in the new and all that stuff. I expect that Mark Carney is going to try and get rid of the carbon tax before he triggers an election. Everyone that was saying it's going to be an election next week, guys, it's going to be an election next week. Mark Carney's going to do it. The problem is that Mark Carney would be truly the unelected prime minister in the sense that most people don't even know that he was the prime minister because people don't pay attention that much. So if he went from being sworn in to running, there wouldn't even be any footage of him serving as prime minister. So he's like this abstract idea that this man is technically the prime minister. So if like a war breaks out, he'll be on TV like announcing something. But, you know, based on how sleepy Canadian politics can be day to day, it means that they'd have no B-roll footage of this guy actually going around and doing the role of prime minister. I guarantee they at least want a month to 3 months in order to have him sort of sit in the prime minister's office, writing stuff down, having the photographer take photos of himself looking over the city of Ottawa in a very pensive, thinking kind of a pose. They want a lot of footage of this guy so that they have, you know, stuff to use for when they're marketing him as being the prime minister that you're voting to re-elect, even though he was never elected. And the Liberal leadership race was a complete farce. Everyone running against him wasn't even trying to win. By the way, funniest thing on the planet today is, do you know who wasn't allowed into cabinet, who was previously the House leader? Karina Gould was, or maybe it was Jennifer O'Connell, but Karina Gould was not given a cabinet position. And that lady was trying hard to get into the cabinet. But I think it's probably what it's reflective of, is all the people standing behind Mark Carney are his personal friends and allies. You know, Chrystia Freeland, one of her kids' godfather is Mark Carney. But he's going to stick with the people he knows, and that's probably about it. It doesn't mean he's actually reforming anything. I don't think he's going to start, you know, having good ideas all of a sudden. I think Mark Carney is mostly just going to be trying to make himself comfortable in office. And that's a big flaw with a lot of leaders. They surround themselves with people who make them comfortable, but nobody who's going to push them to do the things that they probably need to do to win. Like the fact he's still keeping around Stephen Guilbeault is madness. Like he's no longer the environment minister, but he has something to do with Quebec, which still a bad idea because he's going to be telling Quebec to not accept a pipeline probably.
Mr. Carney, I'm Jillian Piper with Global News. I understand that your assets have been put into a blind trust. I wanted to ask you, what is the value of the assets and where did they come from? How can Canadians know that there's no conflict of interest if they don't know where the assets come from?
That's an odd question, or odd way of framing it. The assets are in a blind trust. So, and can I point out that for those who don't follow this, I have 6 months to put, or 120 days to put the assets in a blind trust. I already have put the assets in a blind trust. And once assets are in a blind trust, you don't know that, by definition, you don't know the assets because the trustees take over the responsibility.
What a stupidly aloof answer to that question. As if he puts, it's like he's an infant who doesn't understand object permanence yet. They're asking you, what was the value? Was there anything in there that we could maybe see to know if there was any conflict of interests that you might have going into government? Because it might be in a blind trust, but he knows what the assets currently look like. It's not like as soon as you put your assets in a blind trust that they all get mixed around and he doesn't know if he has money in housing or he has money in molasses or he has money in oil and gas. He doesn't know. He knows what he has. He knows the value of it. Obviously he does. This is the problem with Mark Carney too. And I'm a conservative. I want to see him lose. So I guess this is a good thing for me. But from the perspective of a liberal advisor, you will probably facepalm at least 2 or 3 times a day because the way he answers questions reminds me a lot of the aloofness of Kim Campbell whenever I've seen election footage of her. The questions can be easily spun, and his bad answers, into really bad attack ads on him. Do you know how bad he's been at kind of pushing off criticism, the NDP has a new attack ad against him, and it's not bad. It's actually not bad. If you can be such easy fodder that the NDP have a good solid attack line on you, that's a problem. Here's an ad the NDP released featuring Hamas lover Nikki Ashton.
Which brings me to Mark Carney and Brookfield Asset Management, the person who has been touted as having the solutions to our economic challenges. And yet Mark Carney is very much the poster person for the broken system, the hollowing out of Canada that has made us so vulnerable today. Mark Carney has a clear track record of pushing for wealth accumulation for the rich at the expense of workers and Canadian communities. A 2023 report from the Centre for International Corporate Tax Accountability and Research called Brookfield Canada's top tax dodger.
Like, that's a good ad. Or is the NDP's point still kind of asinine because they seem to think that having wealth is inherently a bad thing? Yeah, they're stupid, but it serves a certain portion of the Canadian public that you would kind of like, I guess, describe as core left, very left across the board voters might be offended by this. A lot of kind of progressive, especially women. I'm not trying to go after women. Any woman watching my channel is probably not voting NDP. But there is sort of that kind of urban, progressive, Olivia Chow, Jody Gondak, whoever the hyper progressive out in Vancouver is. I know it's not Ken Sims, it's somebody else, but the type of person who votes for those type of municipal candidates around the country, those are the type of people who this would appeal to. And I've seen some other ads coming out from the NDP where they actually are good at going after Mark Carney as a fairly corrupt figure. And I think that's honestly one of the only angles I've seen that was intelligent by the NDP, because them going after like Pierre Poilievre is a bootlicker for billionaires, like that doesn't work on Poilievre, because one, the Conservative Party's never been the party that's afraid of wealth creation. They don't care if you become wealthy, they just want you to do it fairly for the most part. And so when the NDP attacks them like, oh, Poilievre's a bootlicker for billionaires because he wants to lower people's taxes, a lot of people just hear that and they're like, oh, he wants to lower people's taxes? That sounds good. Where if you go after Mark Carney for it, it actually kind of sticks a little bit more from the left side of the aisle, because he's not somebody who's going to lower anyone's taxes. He's not going to be someone who's going to lower regulations. So when he ends up benefiting the hyper wealthy, it's legitimately at the expense of middle class people, because he ends up giving them government subsidies and other sort of contracts that end up actually boosting their revenue artificially, whereas Conservatives don't really do that. Yeah, there's always government contracts that exist, but the Conservatives make people wealthy by lowering everybody's taxes. So it's very much more equitable from the NDP's perspective. So that's why it's always a dumb attack on Poilievre. But here was sort of, I guess, the thing that Liberals posted about Carney's speech after the swearing in, that I guess this is their, the really good 51 seconds that they want you to see. So let's all evaluate on the merits. I haven't even watched it yet. I just want to see the kind of content they're creating around Mark Carney.
Ce nouveau cabinet est pleinement conscient de nos responsabilités.
Is this truly all in Canada? Wow. Well, it says, let's build Canada stronger. Did they just post a French clip? Man.
Renforcer les fondations de notre nation durant cette crise et pour bâtir un Canada encore meilleur. J'ai le plaisir de vous présenter l'équipe extraordinaire et qualifiée qui servira au sein de mon gouvernement et qui défendra les valeurs qui nous tiennent au cœur. Notre gouvernement changera notre façon de travailler.
They truly just posted a full clip of him speaking French, and this is complete pablum. You probably don't even need to have been reading the subtitles there to know that he wasn't saying anything particularly interesting. Does he have the non-French one? I don't think he does. Wow. And even their other clips of him are really shaky looking. Okay, well, we'll try and watch this to try and get a general sense of what he was saying at the press conference.
It is my honor to respond to the Governor General's request that I form a government.
By the way, I am not, my computer's not lagging. This is truly the bad quality of the Liberal Party's stream of his speech. It's just frozen.
And it's a solemn duty to serve as Prime Minister at this time of great consequence for our country. The ceremony The wonder of a country. Indigenous.
It's not even, again, it's not buffering. It's literally just there's no audio at
The
all.
opening and closing.
Okay, good job, Liberal
Original.
Party. Okay, you guys are going into the idiot box because you couldn't figure out how to actually get your own video to work properly. Yeah, it's a fairly blah kind of startup for Mark Carney. Could he win the next election? Sure. I've never said that they can't. I just think that the Conservatives are still going to win. Could the Conservatives fumble all they have and only win a minority government, or potentially even let the Liberals back in? Sure, they can. Anything can happen. And I find that the people who tend to get to the HQ of any party who are in the leadership positions, not talking about the MPs, but talking about staffers, so often the people who are in the HQ are some of the most incompetent people that you've ever seen. They truly think that going mild will bring the moderate voters in. I've said this before. There is no such thing as a moderate voter. A voter that has no clear, passionate issues that they care about are called non-voters. They stay home, they don't vote. Those are the 40% of people who do not vote. Any voter who actually goes out and casts a ballot cares deeply about something. And when the Conservative Party over the last 3 months kind of starts easing off the gas and they're not quite sure about what they're doing, you're playing into the Liberals' hands. The ground has been torn up and the soil of the election is going to be different. But that doesn't mean you start not firing away. You always fire your ammunition downfield. Doesn't matter if you're not hitting anything, you just fire for the sheer practice of it. I find it obnoxious every time a party kind of becomes unsure of itself and they don't really put out any new messaging, they don't put any new advertising out, they don't know what kind of angle to take to attack this guy. Just open fire, guys. Like, have you ever fought in a war before? You don't really negotiate every time you decide to fire your rifle or not. You just put lead down range. And I think that's what the Conservative Party is going to have to do over the next couple of months. Lead down range is the message of the day. When you're going after Carney, you're going to want to tear the bark off this guy and make it very clear he's going to be no different than the previous Justin Trudeau Liberal government. And in fact, he's even more left-wing, which is why I call him Mark's Carney. Anyways, so that's it for me today, guys. Or not today. I might make another video today. I'm a liar. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff. And check out my website, WyattClaypool.com, if you want to sign up to my mailing list so that I can keep you informed with any good nominations going on around the country. Maybe I'm not going to be able to recommend too many people this cycle because we're coming to a close, but in the future, it gives me a way of, there's a provincial by-election going on or provincial nomination going on in Saskatchewan. I will have 50 people in that riding. I could let them know about the most conservative person I'm aware of running for that nomination. So anyways, that's it for me, guys. See you later.